The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Come on, Elon. Come on, Elon. Of all the days for all X.com to be down, it has to be today. It's the week of NFL free agency. Now, yesterday, a lot of big NFL news, a lot of big NFL updates, of course. So luckily, Twitter worked yesterday, or X worked yesterday, but X down today, and that's how we kick off our day, at least. But guys, good morning. How are we? Off the bench right here. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. And I thought about this. I'm like, man, by the time this show airs in Dayton, God knows how many updates would have happened. This show will be totally outdated by the time it reruns in Dayton coming up later on at 1. But guys, good morning. How are we? How was our weekend?
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice Twitter's down, I think, because I don't have to hold my breath and act like the Bengals are going to do something.
Correct.
So
that's right.
I can just, go about my day and know that an update's not coming instead of, having blind faith and being let down like every other day in the past.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm doing okay. I will say, if you're a fan of the Bengals, this weekend was not for you, especially yesterday. I would say we're at the all-time panic button mode. Like, whenever you got to hit it. Right now, it's already been hit. It's been smashed, and every Bengals fan in the world is panicking. As far as my weekend, it was good. It was solid. I was in charge of the Chatterbox socials or Chatterbox Twitter, I guess I should say, on Saturday. I was debating on how much I should just be a troll, and I elected to just, you know what, I'm just not going to troll. We'll just do it the way they've been doing it, and continue to do it the right way. But I was thinking about like trolling. I was going to troll UC the whole time. I was just going to say, oh, UC's down by 20 early in the first half. Good. And I was just gonna go on long rants about it. But I'm glad I didn't do that. It saved whatever positive energy I have left for this show. So that's good. Casey, I know you had a busy weekend.
Yep, it was fun. Miami baseball won 2 out of 3, won the series.
Here we go.
They almost won the last game. They almost had the sweep, but couldn't get it done with bases loaded and 1 out. So unfortunate for them, but. Yeah, that was a fun weekend, and while those games were going on, I was freaking out. I had a lot of freakouts over Myles Garret, over DK Metcalf, over all the signings and whatnot that was trickulating throughout the game. But we're here after like 5 beers last night, drinking my sorrows away.
It turns out Casey's reaction on Friday was the only right response to what transpired. Yeah. I thought he was a little bit overreacting. No, it's full on panic mode, and the only way out of this is if the Bengals go out and they sign Tee Higgins today, and they go out and they sign Jamar today, and they get all these deals done, because that's the only way anybody's going to have some semblance of hope. Because right now there is none, absolutely zero. But we got Gesicki.
That's fun.
We got Gesicki for 3 years.
And Cody Ford.
And Cody Ford, that's right. And Cody Ford. So if our social media team on TikTok, I'm sure is happy about that one.
So Friday, when you were referencing Friday, what was Friday? So I was out Friday. Was that the Hendrickson request, or they gave him permission to seek a trade? Correct? Is that what you're?
Yep, Thursday night into Friday. Yeah. So we were reacting to that on Friday, and it wasn't great. It wasn't great, but I thought most of us in here thought Bengals could survive that. The Bengals can survive Trey Hendrickson requesting a trade. Not even to mention that it doesn't mean he's leaving. It just means that they've given him that possibility. If you want that possibility, go find us a first-round pick and you're gone. So there's a chance Trey Hendrickson's back too. I have a hard time believing it, but there's still a chance. And I thought that we all came to the conclusion that, that means that all of our eggs are going to the Jamar and T basket. Well, here we sit on Monday the 10th, and the numbers that we hoped and thought that we could give T and Jamar, they've now skyrocketed. And this is the number one reason why you don't wait until the very last second to pay players. And the Bengals, this is is a penance for that. They are being punished because they consistently aren't proactive, and it's screwing the entire franchise.
Yeah, as bad as Friday was in terms of talking about the likelihood of retaining all those guys, it's somehow gotten so much worse. So
drastically.
Yeah, didn't know that was actually possible about this time on Friday, but yeah, it seems as bad as it seemed in whatever this 3-year window of trying to figure out how to extend these guys has been. This is rock bottom, and I almost said that Friday. So who knows? Maybe you can go down from here.
There's one more domino that would get us to the very, very bottom. We're not there yet. We're not at the bottom yet. The very bottom is our quarterback requesting a trade. That's true.
That's
the bottom. That's as low as you could possibly go as an organization.
I think we got like 15 months.
Yeah, 15 months probably.
Ballpark 15 months until that.
Well, I get
Burrow trade request.
It could be sooner.
Maybe sooner. Yeah,
it could be sooner.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. A lot of action in the NFL over the weekend, free agency and all that fun stuff going to begin this week, and a lot of action already underway. A lot of extensions have happened, and the big news out of Cincinnati, it's not the extensions that have happened, it's the extensions that we're still waiting on to happen. And the more that they wait and the more deals that get done around them, it's like it took the Bengals and the representation of some certain players to get to this point, and it feels like every time a new player gets signed, you have to scrap it and start over because there's a new starting block, and that's whatever this individual's new extension was, or what this wide receiver got, or this pass rusher got. You look at the Crosby and the Garrett situation, how that impacted, obviously, Trey Hendrickson's situation, but obviously, when you look at Crosby and Garrett becoming the highest paid non-quarterbacks in the NFL, that also had a reflection on Jamar Chase's contract, and it moved the bar for that one. So it's just been a ping pong match right now as far as just following all the deals and just waiting to see what the Bengals are going to do in the middle. So we'll get to that more coming up in a minute. We'll recap a lot of what has happened in the NFL. I'm sure a couple things through headlines and more in depth, when we dive into all the NFL headlines from yesterday, and then we'll get into how this impacts the Bengals and everything coming up around the corner as well. But let's kick off the show. Let's send it to our guy, Elliot, for Elliot's headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
You know who I ran into this weekend? I forgot to tell you guys.
Who'd you run into this weekend?
I ran into a chat member, and he came up to me, and he's like, "You're not going to like who I am in the chat."
Oh,
I'm
no.
like, oh, boy. Because I think I know what most of the chat looks like.
Yeah.
He is Smelliot in the chat.
Wow.
Nice.
I met the real-life
Wow.
Smelliot. So, Smelliot, if you're out there listening right now, thank you. It was an honor to meet you. It's good to. I honest to God, I thought that was Mouse Cop's burner.
Yeah,
So
no, I
having that be a real person, that's wild.
That's pretty good. For those people waiting on a whistle, we couldn't be further away from whistle vibes.
No whistles.
No whistles.
We'll start with college basketball. A lot of college basketball stuff. 8th-ranked Michigan State, they took care of 17th-ranked Michigan, 79-62. A fight at the end of the game. I guess a little bit of a fight broke out when I guess the tradition at Michigan State is for the players, the graduating players, to kiss the logo as they walk off the court. The Michigan players decided to just stand on the logo. So they were gonna get into a tussle about that. If I'm gonna be honest, it seemed like an overreaction, but that's because that's where they stand during free throws.
Well, that's Michigan State's tradition. Michigan's tradition is win or lose against your rival, you try to fight them.
Okay, that's fair.
Any sport. So,
I like that.
Yeah, it's fun.
I like that. Towson. So we're going to read off some of these scores here. Towson, they beat Drexel in the quarterfinals of the CAA tournament yesterday. Navy, they advanced to the Patriot League Championship after beating Bucknell 83-77. American, how about American? They will meet Navy in the Patriot League Championship after their win over 4-time consecutive winner of this tournament, Colgate. Colgate's been eliminated. High Point won by 12 over Winthrop to punch their ticket to the tournament. Lipscomb, they're going dancing after winning 76-65 over North Alabama in the ASUN final. Drake, how about Drake, man? I was listening to Rothstein this weekend. I was watching a lot of basketball, and Rothstein's like, they got to get in. No matter what happens in the final, they got to get in. They advance, or I guess they finish their season 30-3. 30-3. They do go on to win the MVC to punch their ticket. They beat Bradley by 15 points in that championship game.
Bradley was a really good team, too. The conversation around if Bradley would have won, would Drake have still been in? A 2-bit MVC would have been really cool. Both those teams are tournament-worthy, good enough teams. Obviously, you lose in a championship game of a conference like the MVC, there's really no chance that you have of getting in. But, those are the teams we wish we'd see at the back end of March Madness, not, the Oklahomas who are 15th in the SEC and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think –
Well,
go ahead.
All right, real quick on that Drake thing, too. Like, I heard them say, like, if Drake would have lost – Bradley obviously would have been in.
Yeah.
Drake should have gotten in. But now, like, what do you do with Bradley? Because Bradley was very good this year as well. And it's like they're talking how, like, it's going to be tough for them to even make the NIT. And it's like this is how wild college basketball is. Like, we're sitting here saying, man, they should still get in the NCAA tournament with their 68 teams. And now the talk is, man, they may not even be good enough to get into the NIT. They're good enough to get into the NIT. It's just how this works with, of course, how that we, slot teams and place teams. It just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, both those teams deserving of being in. Glad Drake didn't have to rely on waiting to hear if their name would be called on Selection Sunday. It will be called this Sunday. But you feel for Bradley because Bradley, a very good program. They've been good for a while. But yeah, that's unfortunate for them. We'll see what ends up happening with their season.
Oh, yeah. Delaware, they dropped 100 on William & Mary to get into the semis of the CAA. I believe that's the Colonial Athletic League. I believe that's what CAA stands for. UNC Wilmington will join them in the semis after beating Hampton by 14. Arkansas State, they're going to the finals of the Sun Belt. They beat South Alabama by 3. Wofford beats the Virginia Military Institute by 20 to go to the championship of the SoCon. Incarnate Word, they hang on in overtime to beat Southeast Louisiana 71-67. And Pepperdine continues their miracle run after beating Santa Clara 78-76 in the WCC quarters. Pepperdine, they've now won 3 games in 3 days. They've only won 3 games in a row once this season. Wow. So they're starting to go on a little bit of a run right now. So good for Pepperdine. Omaha, they won the Summit League championship. Last night they won it, but because St. Thomas was ineligible after they come up to D1, there's a waiting period to make the tournament. They were in the tournament, win or lose. They were already in. They clinched on Saturday, but they won the game anyway to punch their ticket no matter what. So good for them, St. Thomas. They had a good season this year. Hopefully they'll be able to qualify when they're first eligible, I believe, next year. So how about that? But a lot of little tournaments going on right now, and the big guys start, Tuesday? So that's going to be fun. Some games today that should be exciting. So the Horizon, the Justin Kinner Horizon League, I believe the semis take place tonight. Moving on. The Reds are now 7-7-1 this spring after falling to the Angels yesterday 4-1. Ashcraft had a bounce back, I would say, performance, going 4 innings, allowing 3 hits, 1 earned run. He struck out 5. The Reds only had 5 hits. 2 of them were by Sal Stewart. Noelvi Marte hit a triple. Alexis Diaz gave up a hit and a walk, did not allow a run in his inning of work. That's the classic Alexis Diaz. We're going to load the bases up, and then just nobody's going to score. It's going to be a 15-minute inning. NBA, moving over to the NBA, the Cavaliers, they beat the Bucks 112-100 to improve their record to 54-10. 54-10, all 5 starters scored in double figures. The Timberwolves, they dropped 141 in their 17-point victory over the Spurs. You had the Thunder blowing out the Nuggets 127-103. Jokic fell 1 assist shy of another triple-double. I don't know if we haven't talked about this. He was the first player in NBA history this weekend to record a 30-20-20 triple-double. Yeah. He basically had, and again, the times are a little bit different. He essentially had 2 triple-doubles in the same game. Yeah. That's essentially what it was. Absolutely insanity by the Jokic. SGA dropped 40 in their win over the Nuggets yesterday.
What's more impressive, leading the NBA in 6 different statistical categories or leading the NBA in 20, 30, and 40-point games?
Probably every statistical category.
Yeah, call me crazy. I think Jokic should probably win MVP.
Probably. Most likely he will.
No, most likely he won't.
Because they don't believe in
SGA
that?
was minus 700 before 30, 20, and 20, and now SGA is minus 250.
That's crazy.
Because that award it's a storyline-driven award. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. Like the NBA MVP to me means of all the individual like awards you could win in sports, whether it's the Heisman, whether it's the NFL MVP, whatever you want. The NBA MVP is the least valuable of them all. Like, it literally means nothing to me. Like, it doesn't. I don't think it props up careers. I don't look at James Harden different. Like, James Harden is a great basketball player, but I don't look at him differently because he's a former MVP. Same thing with Westbrook, who I love Westbrook. There's just a lot of guys that win MVPs that I'm like, yeah, it's just because you were a fun storyline. You were having a great year on a team that was a feel-good story. But SGA could have the same exact season with OKC for the next 2 years, and he won't win it 2 years from now because it'll be a boring story and there'll be a new star coming up the ranks that they have to give it to. I hate the NBA MVP award. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I just give it to whoever I think deserves it.
Yeah,
I don't care who they actually give it to. I just, in my mind, give it to whoever I think deserves it. Embiid still hasn't won an MVP.
Yeah, I listen. Good. Another day, another Mavericks loss. They finished the game with 7 healthy players, and their 125 to 116 loss to the Suns. By the way, they prioritized health when they traded away Luka. They finished the game with 7 players.
Do you hate the Mavericks?
I hate them more than any
I was going to
team.
say, I think they're high on your list.
I hate them more than any franchise.
You root against them pretty hard, I think.
In the entire world.
I love that.
Former Musketeer, though, Najee Marshall, is now the number 1 player on the team. He scored 34 points, led all Mavericks scorers. Najee Marshall, again, leading the Mavericks with 34 points. They did lose because they suck. Steph Curry. I saw this story this morning. This is kind of wild. He has become the first active player in U.S. professional sports, main sports, I guess there was a little asterisk on that, to take an administration job with an NCAA team. He is now the assistant GM of Davidson.
Oh, wow.
How about that? So Steph Curry now actively in the NBA and actively the assistant GM of Davidson. Good for him.
Very cool.
NHL, the Blue Jackets stay hot, beating the Rangers 7-3. Fantilli records his second career hat trick in their win. And the Capitals, they beat the Kraken 4-2. Ovechkin scored goal number 886. That makes him 9 shy of the record. 9 shy of the record. And finally, we get to the NFL headlines. The Steelers, they are trading for DK Metcalf, a 2025 second-round pick, and flipping picks in the 6th and 7th rounds of the Seahawks is what it took. They also agreed to a 5-year, $150 million contract extension. So how about DK Metcalf? He's going to be in the AFC North for the next few years.
Good for Mike Tomlin getting a nice, relaxed receiver to pair with George Pickens. Those guys, they're going to get along great.
Yeah.
Practices will be easy and smooth. He never has problems with hothead players either.
Nope.
So this will go great.
They'll never get in a
Leader
fight.
of men.
Leader of men. That's right.
That's
DK
right.
Metcalf said he had 3 demands on his trade request: warm weather, stable quarterback situation, and a no doubt contender. So glad he ends up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
There we go. Josh Allen and the Bills are in agreement on a record-setting 6-year, $330 million contract through 2030. That includes $250 million guaranteed. It is the largest guaranteed total given to an NFL player, passing your guy, Deshaun Watson, by $20 million. So
Still not giving him Dak money on that average
That's
annual
right.
value, though.
That's right.
Old Jerry gave Dak that $60 million.
That's right.
No one will sniff it.
The Rams, they came to an agreement with Devontae Adams on a 2-year contract worth $46 million. Good for them. And finally, a little more than a month after requesting the trade, Myles Garret and the Cleveland Browns agreed to a record-breaking contract extension that will consist of $123.5 million in guaranteed money and is worth $40 million a year. He is now the highest-paid non-quarterback in NFL history.
For now.
Those are your headlines.
I can't let you leave it out.
What?
I know
Which
it was
one?
a couple days ago, but I can't let you leave it out. Alabama went down to Auburn this weekend, won 93-91, beat the number 1 team in the country, second loss they've had on their home floor.
I tweeted that
Buzzer
one.
beater by Mark Sears. Unbelievable game. Both teams needed exactly what happened. I think Auburn needed the loss and Alabama needed the win. So I think they're both poised for a good run.
Other news out of the NBA, too, LeBron could miss weeks with the groin injury.
I checked my
MVP
watch. It's early March. This usually happens for him.
Yeah,
so
we're good.
He'll be out for 5-6 games, and then he'll be back and all right.
Load management,
Well,
baby.
They said the convenience. Well, I've never put LeBron in the load management department.
No.
If you were going to load manage a player, maybe a 40-year-old player with the playoffs around the corner, I wouldn't blame them one bit. But
He hit
they
50K, looked around, saw they were the 2 seed, and said, let me get healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mascot.
Jake, I saw What's that?
Mousecop brings up an interesting point. The Lakers play 10 games in their 10 games in their next 14 days. I believe is that what
smart 2-week injury then.
Yeah.
That was the point I was bringing up, where it was the fact that LeBron, coincidentally enough, had just tweeted or had complained about the upcoming stretch for the Lakers, saying how crazy that is. Now, there was a couple extra games. If you think back to the Wildfires, there were some games that they had canceled during that stretch that they dropped in the middle of this 10-game, 14-game stretch, or 10 games and 14-day stretch. So, yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that this injury happens right around the time that they're about to go hard in the paint, if you will. But either way, I saw that over the week. I think it was one of the former teammates of the Michael Jordan with the Bulls. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Ron Harper had said it was more difficult. It was, again, anytime LeBron accomplishes anything, it's like we have to find something to water it down, saying that it's a lot harder to win championships in the NBA than it is to score 50,000 points. Well, I don't know why every time LeBron accomplishes something that someone from that generation has to come out and try to water down something that LeBron has accomplished. It's like they get so defensive of that era. They get so defensive of their guy, Michael Jordan, that they have to make sure they take shots at the guy. It doesn't make any sense to me. But no, I do not think winning a championship, as hard as that is more difficult than scoring 50,000 points. The reason we know this, players win championships every single season. There has only been one player in the history of the league to score 50,000 points, and that one player to score 50,000 points, the only player in the history of the league, has won 4 NBA championships on 3 different teams. I don't understand why every time the guy accomplishes something, there's someone from that era that has to try and water it down as if it's not a big deal. Give me a break.
Well, I agree with you, and that's why I think Bill Russell's better than Michael Jordan.
That's
because
right.
That's the only thing that he's better than LeBron at, and Bill Russell's significantly better than Michael Jordan at. So, championships, baby. 11 for Bill.
A lot of stuff happened in the NFL. Elliot touched on it during headlines. We'll talk about the significance of DK Metcalf to the Steelers, the AFC North, who will be throwing DK Metcalf and George Pickens the football. What does the Myles Garret deal mean for the Cleveland Browns and how they're going to attack this upcoming offseason? Why is it so damn quiet in Baltimore? Are they going to do anything? We'll discuss all of that and more when we come back. More Off the Bench next. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube and ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Just know for our listeners in Dayton, if you are listening to this, there could be some breaking news in the NFL that has happened since we ended the show at noon today. It's not that we're forgetting it or just ignoring it or that we don't know what the hell we're talking about, which that very well could be the case too. This show is being recorded obviously from 10 a.m. to noon, and we're live right now from 10 a.m. to noon, but yeah, just to clarify as far as that goes. But a lot of stuff happened over the weekend. We'll stay in the AFC North. DK Metcalf to the Steelers. They finally got one. Look, I've been making fun of the Steelers for a while. I feel like we all have on this show, because every time there's even a slight rumor of a wide receiver being unhappy at in any spot throughout the NFL, the Steelers are in on him. They're in on him. They never pull the trigger. They never get the deal done, but they're in on him. To their credit, they weren't just in on DK Metcalf. They actually got it done with DK Metcalf, and they got DK Metcalf for, well, a second rounder. They didn't have to give up a first rounder to get him. I know that the Seahawks asking price was pretty high. They originally wanted a first and a third. Everyone rolled their eyes at that. So did I. I don't think they actually thought, to their credit, I don't think they actually thought that they were going to get a first and a third round pick. But why not? Why not ask for for a lot? Why not ask for a haul of a return? Because there might be a team desperate enough to do it. But as we've talked about with T and Jamar and others, this wide receiver class, or not wide receiver class, Jamar doesn't really have anything to do with that, but this wide receiver free agent market, whether it be free agents or players available through trade or cuts or whatever, there's a lot of options out there for teams. It's kind of driven down the value of some of these guys. Your thoughts on DK Metcalf to the Steelers? What does this mean for the Steelers? Does it put them in that Super Bowl contention category? Or right now it's a holding pattern until we can all see, well, it's great. You have George Pickens. You have DK Metcalf. You have a great defense. But who the hell's throwing those guys the football on the offensive side? I think we all just kind of sit and wait to see what they're going to do there. Is it Sam Darnold? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Are they just going to bring Justin Fields back? Is it Russell Wilson? Is he going to ride with DK Metcalf again? How do we see this playing out in Pittsburgh? Who's going to be throwing these guys the football?
I think you put it perfectly there. I think it's a great step in the direction for a contending roster with no one playing the most important position. Every name that they're linked to play quarterback next year in 2025, none of them get me excited and move them into a contender category. Like you said, probably the best name that they're linked to is Darnold, and they're 2 or 3 on that list. So I think in all likelihood it's going to be either Russ, Fields, or Rodgers, and none of the 3 of those make them a contender with just the addition of DK Metcalf. So I don't think it moves the needle much at all. I don't really think it was the move that they should make. They should be focused on fixing quarterback, or as we've said many times on this show, losing so you can get a good enough quarterback early in the draft. Adding DK Metcalf to a team like the Steelers just continues to ensure that they go 9 wins, 10 wins, losing the first round, and pick in the middle of the draft.
Yeah, nothing matters unless you have a quarterback. They don't. Aaron Rodgers, I know that those talks have increased this morning. Aaron Rodgers is an okay quarterback at age 40. He's a phenomenal quarterback all time. He's an okay quarterback at age 40. And I'd imagine his attitude, his weird prima donna attitude, would not gel well with the Steelers. I have a hard time believing that's going to be a fit there. As for Russell Wilson, I think he's, again, at age 40, I'm going to sit here and say that you're an okay quarterback. I'm not going to say that you're the world's best. Justin Fields, I think, gave him the best chance last year. They didn't ride with him. So is Justin Fields really going to want to come back and play for your organization after you did that to him? I'd have a hard time believing that. And I'd also have a hard time believing that Justin Fields can win a Super Bowl. I think he's a fine quarterback, but him winning a Super Bowl, probably not. And then it goes to Sam Darnold, who I don't believe in at all. I know he had a great year last year. He's going to make a lot of money this season. Good for him. He's earned it. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Sam Darnold could ever win a Super Bowl. Until they fix their quarterback situation, they have nothing. They have absolutely nothing. They've tried to get the late-round quarterback in the draft. Kenny Pickett, shout out to him. He's terrible. So, the Steelers have to be bad if they ever want to be good, ironically. That's the best part about the parity in the NFL. You have to be bad to then get back to being good. And they're not bad enough right now to be good in the future. So they're going to keep riding, like Jacob said, that 8 to 9 win mark. They're going to keep sneaking into the playoffs, and they're going to keep getting blown out by the Bills or the Chiefs, whoever they have to play in the opening round of the postseason. To be quite honest, it's an embarrassment. They should be upset about it. I don't know who they want at quarterback. If I had to guess, they're probably going to go. They're going to move on from Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. They're going to go to Aaron Rodgers. That's where I think at least they're probably going to go. And if they do that route, it's just another year of they're going to be okay. So, no, I don't think this makes them better. This move speaks way more to the Bengals than it does to the Steelers to me, because you're paying them what? How much is that per year? 33?
30, yeah.
$33 million a year, which is roughly what we expected probably Tee Higgins to be wanting or asking
the
for.
high end of that.
And now it seems like it's, the longer you wait, we certainly think that the Bengals, or at least Tee Higgins, thinks he's more valuable than DK Metcalf, which means he's going to ask for more than that now. And the Bengals are going to have to sit there and give it to him, which I don't think is going to be possible.
Yeah, we'll get into we'll definitely get into how this all moves the needle for the Bengals coming up as we sit here and wait for them to, that meme we're just kind of poking with the stick, like do something. I know that's kind of you guys right now waiting on the Bengals to do something there. Now the Steelers fascinate me because it's like they're stubborn. They Jacob, you said it earlier, like for them to really get where they need to go, they have to do something they don't like to do, which no one likes to lose. But a lot of times it's not. You could view it as, oh, man, we're going to be losers. It's a reset button. You got to hit the reset button. The Steelers refuse to hit the reset button, and it's a good move. I'm not going to down the move. Like, I like it. But the thing is, like, I keep, Kev here, who I work with, he's a big Steelers fan. We were talking a little bit ago before this show started. He really wants Justin Fields. And I said, Justin Fields, as wild as this sounds, would be the worst quarterback possible for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this case. And here's why. You look at the fact that Geno Smith, who has thrown for a ton of yards in the NFL, and he's been great for Seattle. DK Metcalf had a problem when that guy who threw for a ton of yards couldn't get him the football. You look at George Pickens, who has constant problems when he's not getting the football thrown his way. Justin Fields can throw the football. He's okay. He's not an elite quarterback by any means. He can extend. When we talk about Justin Fields and his ability versus a Sam Darnold or a Russell Wilson or some of these others, it's his ability to extend plays and make plays with his legs. But Justin Fields running, picking up a 15-yard first down with his legs, is that going to make DK Metcalf happy? Is that going to make, obviously, Pickens happy? I think Justin Fields would be the worst option for those two wide receivers, if you ask me. Justin Fields might be the best option for the Steelers. I think it's the worst option for the drama that could ensue from those two wide receivers, especially when it gets to crunch time, when it gets to late in the season, when the games matter more, when you're trying to position for a playoff spot. That would be my concern. Sam Darnold, to me, makes the most sense to appease both of those guys. He could throw. I mean, we saw what he did when he has Justin Jefferson and Tomlinson and some other great guys to throw the football to in Minnesota. I think to keep DK Metcalf happy, to keep Pickens happy, you need a quarterback that's going to throw and throw for a ton of yards. I think that's Sam Darnold. That should be their number one priority. Aaron Rodgers interests me. He has a high ceiling, although right now I think there's a lot of doubts and question marks, but I think he brings that aura to the team of that, man, we feel like we could win now with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers interests me in Pittsburgh. I just think there's a lot of question marks. I can't go diving in saying they're a legit Super Bowl contender with them, but I feel more comfortable with him than some of the others as far as that goes. Pittsburgh fascinates me. I'm very curious to see what they do. You don't bring in DK Metcalf, though, to draft a rookie and have the rookie throw him the football. Correct. So I don't know. They're going to get a veteran. I would also look out. Joe Flacco's name is not being mentioned for Pittsburgh at all, but I could see that being oh, crap, we need somebody that can actually throw the football. But Mike Tomlin hates guys that turn the football over, and that's Joe Flacco. So maybe that wouldn't work either. They fascinate me as far as what they're going to do when it's all said and done.
I think you're absolutely right in terms of appeasing the receivers. Sorry, just real quick. In terms of appeasing the receivers, you're right with the quarterbacks. But I think in terms of the Steelers situation, the worst case scenario is Sam Darnold. I don't know how ready this roster really is to win a Super Bowl. I think it is, a relative contender. I think they can win some games with a competent quarterback, but I don't think Sam Darnold is necessarily that for 17 games. We saw that this year, how he crumpled at the end. I think the first 6 years are closer to what you'll see from Sam Darnold than, 15 games last year. So dumping a bunch of money into him, I think that's going to be a death sentence for some franchise. If that's Pittsburgh, you're probably losing the last few years of, TJ Watt's prime, some of the stars on that defense's prime. Minka Fitzpatrick's still a top-end safety in the league. You're losing the last few years of that if Sam Darnold's not very good and you dump a lot of money into them. I think best case scenario for them is probably a 1 or 2 year cheaper deal on Rodgers, so you don't have a lot of money tied up in the quarterback position. And if he does get hurt or is bad, you can draft someone. I think if they pour a lot of money into Darnold, that really goes for anybody. The reports that Seattle is attached to Darnold now, I think anyone dumping a bunch of money into Sam Darnold to be their franchise quarterback would be a mistake this year.
Josh Allen getting that monster mega deal yesterday, obviously surpassing Deshaun Watson with the most guaranteed money. Now, it's not a fully guaranteed contract, but he has the most guaranteed money in the history of the National Football League. But good for Buffalo. There was no stalemate there. There was no waiting and seeing if they were going to take care of him. Were you surprised that Buffalo came out and just got the deal done ahead of time and made sure that there was no drama with their quarterback moving forward?
No, because that's what good organizations do. I'm not shocked.
That's not what I was leading to. I apologize.
I'm not shocked at all that there are franchises out there that are competent and pay their guys before they're expected to be paid and takes care of them and gives them confidence and gives the fan base hope. I'm not shocked at all by it. Good for them. Good for the Buffalo Bills. Good for Josh Allen. He's deserved it. He had a hell of a season this year, and if anybody deserved that money, it was him. So good on them. Good on the Buffalo Bills for getting it done early, ahead of schedule, so you don't got to worry about Jamar Chase, who now is probably going to get paid $75 million a year.
Yeah, they've also extended Greg Rousseau and their linebacker and, Mitch Morse and Terrell Bernard and Khalil Shakir. Yeah, the Bills are doing what you should do when you get a quarterback who's really, really good and you have a chance to win Super Bowls. You keep good players around him, you extend them early to save some value, and you keep the tires rolling and you keep being a contender for years and years and years because you have the hardest part of that equation figured out. And once you know that, you just change the way you operate. I mean, the Bills were a terrible organization who didn't make the playoffs for a long time. They got Josh Allen. They changed how they operate. I wish my team would do that. But yeah, I think this is exactly what you should do if you have a quarterback like Josh Allen. Keep extending him. That's what the Chiefs did. Obviously, they got a 10-year deal with Mahomes right out of the gate, but they keep restructuring and moving it around, giving him what he's worth. This is what you do for your franchise quarterback. You make sure they know that they're valued and they're appreciated, and you want them to stay there for their entire career, and that's what Buffalo's doing.
Casey, I know Twitter was down for the longest time. Was there anything that happened while we were on the air to start this show? Well, what's any other breaking news out of the NFL right now?
I'll bring up a couple different things that happened. Panthers signed J.C. Horn to a 4-year, $100 million deal. That makes him the highest paid DB in the NFL and of all time at the current moment. The Falcons released Grady Jarrett. That could be a guy that the Bengals might target here as a veteran 1-year deal piece. Has been on the decline, but could add some veteran presence there. And then the last thing, the Steelers placed a second-round restricted tender on running back Jaylen Warren. It's worth $5.346 million. So I think that means that if a team wants him, they have to give up a second round for him. Is that right, Jacob?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's all the news that I've seen so far that's relevant.
Our friend of ours got signed.
Oh.
Sheldon Rankins, $7 million.
There we go.
To the Texans. Texans swoop him up, bring him back to where he was before he came over to Cincinnati. Obviously had a successful year in Houston that we gave him a lot of money. So good for him going back there, I guess. Him and Cap.
You know what I can't wait for? Next year, I can't wait for. I feel like we're going to have like Houston Texans segments every week. Where, all right, when we come back, we'll have how did Joe Mixon perform and how did Sheldon Rankins perform for the Houston Texans? Yeah, the Sheldon Rankins thing, it'll be interesting to see how healthy he gets so quick all of a sudden.
Tank Dell, significant surgery, Stephon Diggs, free agent. Maybe they add T too. And
I'm hoping.
We just watch the Texans next year.
That would be fun. I'm all in on that.
I forgot about the Dell thing. Yeah, like that's a team that a year ago you had Stephon Diggs to Dell and everybody, and it looked like that was one of the best receiving corps in football, and now that's somewhere they're weak. If they're weak at wide receiver next year, they have no one to blame, though, because there's so many wide receivers available, and yet the Texans have been very quiet as well. Baltimore's been very quiet. Look, free agency, technically, I mean, it's the tampering period right now, right? But there's no indications at all. They're not tied to any big-name free agents at all either. Like, are you guys surprised at how quiet the things are in Baltimore right now?
They got Ronnie Stanley done, and I think they were very much in a similar situation that the Bengals are in. Obviously, 3-1, it's a little bit different of a conversation, and they're a very well-run organization, and we are not. So I think the level of, optimism and hope that they do the right thing is very different with those two fan bases. But I would assume that their focus for the last however many weeks since the season ended was to extend Ronnie Stanley and getting that done to make him one of the highest paid left tackles in all of football. This is a very, very weak tackle class in free agency. And for the Ravens, you want to be a contender right away. You want to keep staying at the top of the AFC where you've been. I think keeping their guys in the building is priority one, and they got Ronnie Stanley done over the weekend. I would assume that's why we haven't heard as much, because that was their top priority. Now that they have that done, I would assume they get the ball rolling. They were connected kind of in one of those long tweets that just listed teams. They were connected to Cooper Kupp pretty originally when he was talking about leaving, and those trade talks have died down over the last couple days and weeks. But Les Snead, the Rams GM, Sean McVay, obviously their coach, have stayed strong that they will be moving Cooper Kupp. There's really no option that they do the Matthew Stafford thing and figure out a contract and a way to bring him back. They're standing pat that he will be moved. So he's the only big name that I've heard linked to Baltimore. I think DK Metcalf always made sense just for the offense they ran, but the draft capital was a little too rich for them. Plus the extension that he was going to get, they weren't going to give him $30+ million. They're too good of an organization to do that. So I think it was just getting their guys done, and now they'll focus on adding.
Yeah, and again, Baltimore, I think when you look at their roster, they're a Super Bowl contender even if they don't do anything heading into next season. It'll just feel like, we like new, shiny, new things, and that's why it's like we want to see new additions being added to our team. We'll get to that more in a bit, but the Browns with Myles Garret, that news caught everyone off guard. yesterday. Look, I'm not going to say I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that they got it done in a not so, like, it was getting ugly for a bit. It was like 1 minute you'd hear like one side say we're not trading him, and then Myles Garrett's message would get more aggressive in the media. And I'm like, man, this is going to, like, I could see him sitting out. I could see him not playing games next year. But I did not see a scenario where he played for anybody else in 2025. The Browns are not going to take on a $30 or $40 million cap hit just to send him elsewhere. I don't care how many draft picks you were going to get back in return. That was almost going to make it to where they would have to blow everything up, which they probably should have. I was in the camp of I'm fine with them continuing to try to add pieces to compete right now, but I would have also supported a full-on blow this whole thing up and start a rebuild as far as that goes. Obviously, that's not the case. Whatever the message was to Myles Garrett, the money being the number one message, obviously, even though he said, hey, money's not a part of this, money very much was so a part of it. But the bottom line is he was going to get the money no matter what. No matter where he went, he was going to get that money. I mean, you could argue whether a team was going to give him 40 or not, but I mean, if we're talking 38 or 39, what does that matter to us at this point? But how surprised were you that the Myles Garrett Myles Garrett deal got done and the timing of it right before free agency technically starts?
Everyone wants to play for a contender and play for a winner until a record-breaking deal hits the desk. So I don't blame Myles Garrett at all. I think everyone in the NFL would stay pat if they got a record-breaking deal to jump $5 million over the next guy at your position. So yeah, I don't think this is as much of a surprise when you hear the numbers, because this is what it was going to take for the Browns to keep Garrett. They were going to have to give him a record-breaking deal in the $40 million range, and obviously he's going to take that. So yeah, I think this was probably the last chance they had to keep him. He was threatening to sit out games, obviously pushed the ownership in the front office to the brink, and they gave him the offer he wanted to stay in Cleveland. So kudos to him for getting that done.
I am a little bit shocked. I'm a little bit shocked just because usually I feel like when a player is that negative about being with an organization, that I'm not saying that he wouldn't have played next year. I think there was a good chance he was going to play next year for Cleveland. I have a hard time believing Cleveland's like, you know what, we like what we hear right now. Let's go out and pay him $40 a year. It seemed weird to me. But at the end of the day, good organizations, they pay good players no matter the price. So that's what the Browns just did, and kudos to them. They're at least going to be, if they can find a quarterback, maybe they'll be competitive next year. I have a hard time believing that they're going to, win the AFC North without a quarterback, but $40 million is $40 million. So Myles Garrett, it makes sense.
Casey, I know right away when that happened yesterday, you were blowing up the group chat right away. I know you were kind of, you were just scrolling Twitter. I know you were just kind of sitting there yesterday, just scrolling Twitter, getting bombasted with all the news. Your takeaway, Myles Garrett in Cleveland, obviously for a long time moving forward, but obviously it's not the fact that he's in Cleveland, although that does impact Cincinnati. You play him twice a year, but the contract obviously is what we're going to talk about more in a moment. But your thoughts on Myles Garrett staying in Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, congrats to Cleveland. I mean, they were able to convince a dude who wanted nothing but to get out of there, and they managed to keep him around. I mean, that's kudos to you guys, because I know my franchise can't do that right now. So, I mean, it makes me a little jealous, but he deserves it. He deserves every penny. I mean, I think he's by far the best edge rusher in the NFL at this very moment. Dominant, and yeah, I mean, he deserves to be the highest non-paid quarterback in the NFL.
The protest worked, Kenner. The protest worked.
That's true.
The one person that went out for the Myles Garrett protest outside of the stadium, he convinced them. That was all him.
Remember, I showed you guys the picture. There was a lot of people there.
Yeah, that was from 4.5 years ago. 4.5 years ago.
But all right, off the bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. All right, vibes are low right now when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're going to talk about, obviously there's no update. The last we heard from the Cincinnati Bengals that Trey Hendrickson had been granted permission to seek a trade. Of course, we figured that we were very curious to see what momentum or what direction the team is going to go in after the announcement of Max Crosby, who at the time was named or was listed as the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. That pass rusher contract for him obviously got everyone's eyes opened up as far as what that's going to mean for Trey Hendrickson, and honestly what it meant at the time for, of course, Jamar Chase. But now with Myles Garrett moving that ball even further down the road, it makes things even more interesting for the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about all of that and more when we come back. More off the bench when we return. All right, we welcome you back off the bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett. Radio listeners in Dayton, I'm going to keep saying this throughout. Obviously, things right now, it's a day of breaking news throughout the NFL. It was like that over the weekend. Off the bench, when you're listening to it in Dayton, it's re-airing later in the day from 1 to 3. But we are live every day from 10 to noon on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. So if we are saying, hey, I wonder what's going to happen with Trey, and then an update with Trey happens and he extends with the Bengals, it's not that we don't check our phones. It's just that the show's being aired later in the day. But we do, technically, as of right now, we're live on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. We technically have a slight update on Trey Hendrickson, a tweet update from Albert Breer, Jacob, that you have for everyone.
That's right. Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer wrote, it's a tricky spot for Cincinnati to be in, finding a team to give up a premium pick and $30 million or more per year for a 30-year-old pass rusher. Hendrickson's camp at one point told the Bengals that they could bring home a first-rounder for him, but that obviously has not happened yet. So it appears during the negotiation strategy when Trey Hendrickson brought up that trade request to the Bengals front office, Hendrickson's agent, camp, and maybe even himself assured the team that when he does hit that open market, teams would be willing to give them a top 32 pick in the draft for his services. And I think that's a line that as soon as this news hit the desk, we talked about right away. This is a tough pill to swallow because he's one of the best, if not the best, free agency signings in Bengals history. But if you're able to net a first-round pick for a 30-year-old edge rusher, I think that's a pretty good move. If Hendrickson's camp thought that was going to happen, that might have made the Bengals' decision to grant that trade request a lot easier and let him search the market. And now they could be in a tough position if that return isn't coming to fruition.
So what you're saying is that he could get a first-round in return?
We don't know yet. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet, and I would imagine that if Trey Hendrickson were to get a first-round pick in return on a trade, that a trade would be accepted relatively quickly. Now, obviously, that's just speculation, but I would assume that that would be a line that the Bengals would be pretty excited to get back in a return for Trey Hendrickson if they don't plan on paying him that much at $30+ million. And if they were, Hendrickson's camp was giving them assurances that that was going to be the return in a prospective trade during the negotiations, maybe they weren't as hesitant to grant that trade request as they have been in the past. I don't know for sure, but it certainly seems like with the way this is drawing out and Hendrickson, taking trips to local media and still banging the table for how much he wants to be here, it seems that premium pick return might not be on the table at least yet.
If you are a team in the NFL, do you give up a first rounder for him?
I think there's only one team that would, if I was that team. I think the only team I would consider doing that is the Commanders, because you're picking in 29th and you have a rookie quarterback on a cheap deal. You're in a sort of win now mode. You have, a lot of holes you need to fill, but you're not going to get a Super Bowl caliber player at 29 in all likelihood. So you flip that pick for Trey Hendrickson, change your edge rusher, your whole position there. I mean, you moved on from Jonathan Allen. You need to get to a quarterback. Myles Garret, they were the betting favorite outside of Cleveland to land him. Maybe they shift their focus to Trey Hendrickson. That's really the only first rounder. I would imagine the other teams that have been linked in the Falcons pick 15th. That would be very, very rich for a Trey Hendrickson trade. So I'd be pretty shocked there. I think if they do get a first rounder, it would be comfortably in the back half.
Yeah, the only other, because I'm looking at this now, like, again, it's one thing to have a first round pick you're willing to part ways with to get him, but do you have the, are you going to pay him? Because that's really what this all comes down to, as well. A team like Miami, I'd keep an eye on the Miami Dolphins. I know that before Myles Garret got that deal done yesterday, Miami was there were some reports over the weekend that, Miami was going to be sniffing around Cleveland trying to see if there was a possibility of getting a deal done for Myles Garret. So that would have been an interesting one there. But we'll see what ends up happening there. Let's talk more about the Bengals when we come back. Again, a little touch and go segment there. There you go, Elliot. To close out hour one on the radio side, hour two on Off the Bench on the radio side. Coming up next, more Bengals talk when we return. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. So we just got a slight update as far as kind of what's going on with the Trey Hendrickson situation. I wasn't on with you guys on Friday when that Trey Hendrickson news kind of came out. I do remember on my chart, I remember saying, I don't know if that's the end of the world. I think we see teams do this a lot of times with players saying, hey, why don't you go out and test your own market? Like, go see for yourself. Like, if you feel like we're undervaluing you with kind of how we're approaching this, let the league tell you. You go out and seek a trade, and let's see what the rest of the league is telling you as far as what they believe that your worth and value will be. And then sometimes that could work against you, and sometimes that could work in your favor. Sometimes the player needs to see and hear it and experience it for themselves, and then it kind of resets the negotiation and kind of makes it easier going forward. We just needed to see what those next steps were. Jake, you just mentioned that update from Albert Breer as that goes. But, last week, or at least at the beginning of last week, everyone felt pretty confident that a deal for T and a deal for Trey and keeping Jamar, keeping those three, along with Gesicki, who that deal technically is done now. But everyone felt pretty confident that those three are all going to stay in Cincinnati. Now things have drastically changed. We talk about waiting and how that can impact you and how that can hurt you. I mean, waiting just 7 days. I mean, the difference, the drastic change in the market today on a Monday compared to where we were last Monday is so significantly different that it's hard to feel bad for the Bengals in this particular situation, but that's besides the point. How are we feeling about where the Bengals are at right now? It feels like a completely new negotiation with Tee Higgins. It feels like a whole new negotiation with Trey Hendrickson. And I don't look at it as a negotiation with Jamar Chase to keep him in Cincinnati, but it definitely makes it a lot more difficult as far as maybe stretching it out even further. I don't think any of these are close to getting done, or am I wrong? Do you feel like one of them is at least close to getting done?
No, I don't think a single one's close as of right now. And if it was close, it just got reset yesterday.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're close. I think they're distantly far apart. And by the way, that was still the last report that we heard, is that they were far apart with the deal with Jamar Chase. We had never been close with Trey Hendrickson. Tee Higgins was the only one that we've said, and everybody's said that our goal is a long-term deal. Our goal is a long-term deal. Well, now you waited too long. And this is what happens when you wait. And you're being punished for it, and you should be punished for it. It's a joke. The Browns had a player openly, basically at no disrespect, but essentially say Cleveland couldn't win. Cleveland's a bad place. I don't want to be here anymore. Get me out of Cleveland. What do? They say, you know what? $40 million. Why don't you come back now? They fixed a problem that was essentially already over. Nobody thought that Garrett was going to re-sign with the Browns. They thought he would probably play this year, but something would happen afterwards. But they didn't think they'd probably extend him with a $40 million a year deal. That's probably not what happened. So now the Bengals are sitting there and they're looking at these three players. You're going to have to pay $33 million to Tee Higgins, $33 million at least to Trey Hendrickson, and Jamar Chase, you're going to have to go at least 41, 42 million.
I'm hoping for 40,001.
Yeah, that's probably what you're looking at, and this is what happens when you wait. You could have had the Jamar Chase deal done last offseason. You didn't do it. He begged you to do it. In fact, you begged him to do it.
Yeah.
The lack of communication or the miscommunication between the Bengals and these players is mind-boggling. Get the deal done. Again, there's no way of knowing what they're asking for. If the Bengals are lowballing them, if the Bengals, I'll say this too. If the Bengals are offering him solid deals, like let's say they offered T and Trey $30 million apiece a week and a half ago, right? And they turned that down. I would come out and say that. I would come out and say I did it, because right now your organization looks terrible. The Bengals look lost. They look cheap. They look like a poverty organization, and people are going to continue to kill them until one of these deals gets done. And even then, it's probably not going to be fixed, because you're not going to bring back all three players when you could have. You absolutely could have if you got these deals done early. You didn't, and now you're sitting here on March 10th begging for somebody to come back.
It's cost you no less than $10 million a person.
So
less
far
than $10 million a person. And I'm talking about in the last week for some of those guys. I mean, when Max Crosby signed, that reset the quarterback market to right above where Justin Jefferson was, still right around $35 million a year. That's about $1 million more than when Duke Tobin said we're going to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback. Now it's $5 million above that. If you would have extended Jamar Chase last offseason when you should have, $35 million a year, maybe 36 or 7. If you would have extended Tee Higgins when you should have 2 off seasons ago, he's sitting somewhere around 22 to 25. don't even get me started on Jesse Bates at 11 or 12, right, Casey? That's the one that keeps Casey up at night. And then Trey Hendrickson, when you extended him 1 year last year, it would have been about a $28 million extension at the top of the market, which he probably wouldn't have gotten before the season he had last year. So you've cost yourself roughly $10 million a person in terms of these negotiations. We're talking about the difference from last week Jamar Chase to this week Jamar Chase being Jesse Bates. That's crazy. How do you get in this situation? And then you look around the league and you see every other team that can even barely call themselves a contender getting the period before free agency and right into free agency ready to go. Heck, the Panthers are as far from a contender as you can be. Bryce Young shows them a little flash of something in the last 5 weeks. Boom, free agencies today. Let's extend our exciting young corner. Let's reset the corner market. Keep the few exciting players we have in this town because we need to have something around a quarterback that could maybe win. We know our quarterback can win, and we won't put anything around him. I don't understand it.
There's no rational thought behind it if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. Do it. Just get it done. Because the longer you sit here and play with these contracts, the worse it's going to get. Just get it done. This isn't a difficult thing that we have to do here. You have to pay Jamar Chase. If you want to let go of Tee Higgins, fine. You let go of Tee Higgins. You can't let go of Tee Higgins and Trey.
Right.
You got to pick one of them. And to be quite honest, you should have picked them both. But because of your incompetence, now we sit here, we're behind the 8 ball, every other team's getting deals done, and we just sit here and do nothing. It's a joke. The Bengals should be ashamed. And I keep seeing in here that the Haslams threw money at Garrett to make a problem go away. The Bengals should be throwing every dollar they have to make this problem go away because this is nonsense. It's utter nonsense. I've heard the argument that championship level teams, they don't pay 2 wide receivers, right? They don't get the 2 elite wide receivers, pay them each $40 million. You don't do that. You got to keep Trey Hendrickson. And I've heard vice versa. I've heard every argument under the sun. The bottom line is, if you don't have any of them, you don't win anything. So sign them now. I don't get it. I truly, honest to God, I don't get it. You have the funds, you have the ability to do so, and you're not doing it. You have all a cap in the world, and you refuse to do it. And now, as you sit here and wait, tick, 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 the clock is ever going, and the Bengals still have nothing to show for it. I think a deal is going to get done. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not going to sign somebody. I just think it's a colossal joke that it hasn't happened. Even if they bring back T, even if they bring back Jamar, all this bad PR is more than deserved because you never do anything proactively. It's always behind the 8 ball.
And I've said since Trey Hendrickson requested a trade and the market swelled to where it did, I wouldn't pay him what the market's at right now. I don't think at 30 years old, I think most of the metrics show that Andrew Whitworth is a massive outlier, that a guy that gets better and keeps playing at an all-pro level past 30 years old, that is a massive outlier. And obviously we're scarred by that in Cincinnati, and I think it's multiplied because we saw him play left tackle at an extremely high level in a Super Bowl. And, that obviously hurts, and people don't want to be scarred by the same thing with Trey Hendrickson this year, but I think it doesn't necessarily make sense for the Bengals to pay him $30+ million. But that doesn't make me any less mad that they didn't pay him $25 million when they could have extended him for that. I think most of the frustration that comes from the Bengals front office is that we are in a situation now where everyone knows we can't extend all 3 of these guys. At these current prices, at current market value, you can't extend all 3 of these guys. A year ago today, it would have been very easy.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from.
And by the way, real quick, Justin, Joe Burrow went on the media tour, and if I'm going to be honest, I thought it was a little bit much because I didn't think that the Bengals needed to be told by their quarterback to go pay everybody. It turns out Joe Burrow should have done it earlier. He should have gone on every podcast in the world, every show. He should have gone on Good Morning America, every show on the known universe that says, I want to bring my guys back. Let's bring them back. Because the Bengals aren't listening. I wonder what there would be if he didn't do that. I wonder how far behind they'd be if he didn't go on all those shows during the Super Bowl week and hear Joe Burrow say that we need these guys back. Because it seems like they're so far behind everything right now that they're not going to be ready for the start of the season. It affected the season last year. Nobody's going to be able to convince me otherwise. That Patriots game was because of whatever was going on with contracts was a factor. Trey Hendrickson and T both requested a trade last year. They do I'm going to retire thing, whatever. They go out to Jamar Chase. Hey, Jamar, here's a deal. It's a bad deal. You want it? And he says, no, I don't want your bad deal. And he says, okay, so I guess we'll just not do any more deals anymore. How does that work? How does that look? It looks terrible. And you start last season terribly because of it. I firmly believe it. And now you're looking at this situation, this mess that they've concocted themselves, and you're probably going to look at it again coming up this season, at the beginning of this year. So when people tell me that the beginnings of the seasons don't matter, they're going to matter because our guys aren't going to be happy to be here. Nobody is because they don't get deals done.
Yeah, that media tour that Burrow did, I know some people got mad because they said I was stirring the pot. I said, I think that's the major, that was one of the biggest red flags that I picked up on was that media tour, because if like Lamar Jackson's not doing a media tour, putting pressure on the Ravens to add talent, like no other quarterback is doing that. Myles Garret went on a media tour, and it was that was a bad thing. It was good for him. He was trying to get what he wanted. Like, good for Joe Burrow, good for Myles Garret. They went on a media tour because they didn't trust their organizations to do the right thing, and they felt like their only option was to try to gain leverage by the public pressure. And Joe Burrow, I think that it's unfortunate that he felt he had to do that, because the thing is, I knew it was a red flag because when Joe Burrow and even Duke Tobin, who said that he talks with Joe Burrow regularly, that they always have a sit down after the second the season ends, they always have a sit down. That means they probably already had that sit down. And if you would have told Joe Burrow something that he felt confident about, I don't think Joe Burrow would have felt he needed to go on that media tour. Clearly, he didn't like the plan or whatever the message was from Duke Tobin in the front office when he had that meeting, which is why he felt he needed to do that. Same thing with Myles Garret, why he did what he did. He did not like the plan. He had let it be known a couple weeks left in the season he was going to meet with the front office, and if they couldn't portray a plan for how they wanted to compete moving forward, he was going to ask out. And sure enough, didn't like the plan. He went on the media tour. I don't know. And I don't know what's going to change, because that's the scary thing for you guys. If Joe Burrow, there will never be another player that comes to Cincinnati that will do for the city of Cincinnati what he has done. Yeah. And to know that not even he can get them to change their ways, and let's give him time, there's still a chance for him to do it. But if he can't get them to change their ways, nobody will. My favorite line from Jay Morrison when he came on, Mike Brown doesn't blink. He doesn't blink in the staring contest and negotiations, in the way of doing their business. He doesn't blink. He doesn't change his ways. They will not do business any different way than what they've done to this point. That's the unfortunate part. I just thought, even as a non-Bengals fan, I thought there's no way that they're not going to change their ways. I thought they started to change their ways as it was. They got the contract done with Joe Burrow in a non-dramatic fashion. You have the Ring of Honor now. There's just a lot of things that, the naming rights to the stadium. They started doing a lot of things that they traditionally have never done in the history of that franchise. It felt like they were kind of steering in a different direction. They're not, and that's the unfortunate part when it comes to that. But the good news is, I'll let you respond. Sorry, my bad.
I was just gonna say. It's all that stuff you just said. It's great, good for them. It's like getting an ice cream cone and putting sprinkles. All that stuff. The Ring of Honor, the selling the stadium. That's all sprinkles. At the foundation of every ice cream is the actual ice cream, and our ice cream sucks. So that's what it's going to be going forward. And until someone changes my mind that they're not the Bengals anymore. Look, they paid Joe Burrow. Great. They made a move that literally every franchise in the world has to make. That's what they've done here. We have Jamar Chase that we could have gotten for like $25 million. You had Tee Higgins that Jacob said you could have gotten for like $22 million. Trey Hendrickson, same type of deal. You go to Jesse Bates, and you go down the line, it's like you don't get anything done. You're still the same cheap organization that everybody makes fun of, and you're going to continue to be that. Because even if they get deals done here, they're still that organization because of what you've lost. You've lost millions of dollars because of incompetence. It's a joke. I don't care if they sell the stadium. I don't care if they change the concession menu. I don't give a damn what you do. Just make deals and make actual football decisions here. That's what I want to be done. You've had a GM for 35 years? How old? The GM's been here for 55 years.
I think he's about 55 years old.
So it's like it's a joke, and we're going to sit here and complain, and it's rightfully so that we complain, because the Bengals they missed the playoffs back-to-back years with Joe Burrow. Good organizations do not do that. When they have a star quarterback, you don't miss the playoffs back-to-back years. Nobody does it except for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Not to mention, they're the cheapest team in the NFL, and they are the worst team at being cheap in the entire NFL. Every single year, in their route to try to save, $1 or $2 million, they lose 15. So I don't know how they're so bad at being a contender, and they're so bad at being a cheap organization. I just don't get it.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll talk a little bit more Bengals, NFL. We'll keep an eye on kind of what's going on there. We do have some Reds updates around the corner. More players obviously reassigned to minor league camp now. So one interesting name on that list that the Reds just reassigned. We'll talk about that. Coming up around the corner, more Bengals, more NFL talk when we come back. Reds around the corner, more Off the Bench coming up. All right, and we are back Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Where do the Bengals go from here, though? Because you have these three major negotiations happening right now. Like we're sitting and waiting for an update on, regarding Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. I think we feel the best about Jamar Chase's contract getting done over the other two, no doubt. I feel like if you don't have Trey, T becomes easier as well. But at the same time, it's like we keep saying, and by the way, we've said this for a while. Well, we know Jamar Chase isn't going anywhere. We know he's not going anywhere. Then why isn't this done? Like that's the thing that just doesn't make sense. Like we just keep saying things like that. Like Jamar Chase isn't going anywhere. Of course he's going to be here long term. They're going to do what. Remember the quote was last year at camp. They're going to bend over backwards to get a deal done. I don't think they've even come close to bending over, even close to backwards.
Mike Brown hasn't stretched in a decade.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But like. I feel like the stressful part is this is a team, they are busting their ass to get Trey Hendrickson, Tee Higgins, and Jamar Chase taken care of so that they could bring them back, the same three that they had last year that they missed the playoffs with. And I'm not saying that these guys are good. I'm just saying they're doing a lot of work to bring back the same roster that missed the playoffs last year. If you're giving all your attention towards these three, how are you realistically focusing on bettering the roster for next season? Like this is putting a huge damper on next season as well by making all of these things so damn complicated. How do the Bengals juggle adding free agents starting this week, improving this roster, focusing on the draft, doing all of that, all while morale seems to be at an all-time low with this franchise right now while trying to get Trey, T, and Jamar's deals done?
Well, that's exactly why morale bottomed out this weekend, is because free agency started today and officially starts on Wednesday, and now you are keeping your focus on three guys that you could have gotten done at any point in the last 3 months, instead of getting that done during that time and then turning your focus to external free agents to add to that roster that missed the playoffs last year. Duke Tobin said we don't want to pay more money for the same roster, and at the time I thought, yeah, I agree with you. Let's extend these guys, then let's improve the roster. That's what we should do. Turns out he meant he doesn't want to extend these guys at all. So, that really stinks, but that's where we're at now. Yeah, I mean, how many weeks ago, Casey, did we say that, Monday, if not Monday the 10th, Wednesday the 12th is the hard deadline for these guys to get extended? How long have we been circling those dates? Because that's exactly what happens. We now have to focus on three guys that we should have had done weeks ago when we could be focusing on everyone else and improving the roster. They just continue to set themselves back every single opportunity they have to set themselves back.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to accurately describe the feeling of how, or the situation of how I was feeling about the team Friday. I didn't do a good job of it because I was so mad, but now I'm a little more calm about this situation. Now everything's doomsday. I mean, they really failed years ago. I mean, we already talked about it. You get Tee Higgins done sooner. It's less money that you have to pay now, and same thing with Jamar. Like, you just get these things done sooner and things will work out. And that's That's really what the bottom line is that they just refuse to pay people top dollar, but end up having to pay people top dollar. That's what's crazy, is that they refuse to be the ones to set the market, when if they were just do that ahead of time, you're just saving yourself down the road, and you would look like a steal to have Jamar Chase at $36 million right now. It would look like a steal to have Tee Higgins at $25 million right now. And it's too late now. Like I've already said it in the chat. They failed this offseason. They've costed themselves a couple starters. And that's the sad part. I think if they would have just gotten down to it even a couple weeks ago, they could have still saved the season. It's too late now.
And here's the worst part of it too, Casey. It's like, if I believed even a little bit that the Bengals could throw together a solid draft, then yeah, I'd be more okay with this situation.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be okay with it. I'd be more okay with it. They are terrible at drafting. Horrible. They don't sign free agents at a high clip either, if I'm going to be honest. Past couple of years, it's been a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're sitting in a spot where it's very similar to that, like 2011 season where, you just traded Carson, things are never been lower, and they got lucky with AJ. They got lucky with getting Andy Dalton. Yeah, we got the quarterback figured out, but it's going to take that sort of miracle type of draft where just about every single pick in that draft provided you with starter or star level talent. And I just don't think that this team at this moment in this draft I don't know, man. It's just a really tough spot to be put in. And I don't know, man. I feel like the Bengals right now, the main focus, it can't be on anything else but Chase and T, if you ask me. But I mean, they can still sign some guys. Like, it's not like they can't go out and get a guy. It's just, you're not going to be able to compete in the top market without figuring those guys out. Like, you're not going to compete with the Josh Sweats and the Milton Williams deals of the world because you don't have your main guys figured out. And they're probably going to just settle on Azeez and Levi Onwuzurike and, other low-level, mid-level starters and just roll the dice that the draft works out. Like, that's where we're at right now, and that's unfortunate.
Everyone points to, obviously, 2020 minutes when we got Joe Burrow. That's why the organization turned around, but it's a little bit deeper than that. Why did the organization turn around from such a bad roster to being able to compete in 1 or 2 years? Obviously, Joe Burrow, top of the first round. Second-round pick, instant difference maker, Tee Higgins. Third-round pick, instant difference maker, Logan Wilson. Fourth-round pick, Akeem Davis-Gaither, special teams captain for 3 years, third linebacker. Fifth-round pick, Khalid Kareem, who was a rotational edge rusher as a rookie and second-year player. Hakeem Adeniji in the 6th round, started at the offensive line for many, many games. Marcus Bailey, rotational linebacker. The next year, obviously Jackson Carman stunk in his time here, but he started to tackle in Buffalo and played really well and was part of the reason why we won that game. Joseph Osai, rotational edge rusher right after Jamar Chase. The only 2 drafts the Bengals have ever done a decent job is the only 2 or 3 year span they've been competitive. It's not rocket science. You have to hit in the draft if you're not willing to extend your players. And the only 2 times they did it, they've been competitors for a window afterwards. They kept none of those, or they're on pace to keep basically none of those guys. So incredibly frustrating that, they found what worked and continue to go away from it.
Obviously, free agency not done. These deals, like the deals have not been done yet. The deals have not been. It's not as if they're not going to get done. We were just sitting back and waiting. And unfortunately, I see some guys say, well, it could be in the middle of the summer. It could be a while before some of these are done. I don't know how you attack free agency in the draft without knowing whether these deals get done or not. I don't trust the organization when they say, well, we know they're going to get done, then get them. Then get. I think the longer they go out, the more you risk pissing these guys off.
Correct.
To where T and his agent just say, just get me out of here. I'm done. Just we're done. We're not playing ball anymore. I love Joe Burrow. I would love to play with him for many, many more years, but this just isn't worth it anymore. Jamar Chase could honestly look at this front office and just say, Joe Burrow's my guy. But Joe Burrow would be smart to get out to, like, they're risking pissing these guys off to the point to where they don't want to play ball and get a deal done just to get it done. And I feel like the Bengals are doing this like, well, eventually they're just going to want to get it done just so they can get out there and play. I think they've met their match with some of these guys. I don't think that's going to be the case. What happens next? Like, what's the first domino at this point? I feel like it's a repeated conversation, but now that things have got even messier, what is that first domino? I don't know. Do any of these deals get done before we start free agency hot and heavy on Wednesday?
If T doesn't get done by Wednesday, it's not getting done.
Yeah, the thing that I wanted to say really quickly is like the only thing that the Bengals should do now is what I said on Friday. You invite them to the office and you do not let them leave without a deal. You just don't. You sit there for hours.
They were here over the weekend and left.
That's just unacceptable, in my opinion. You just can't let them walk out. You got to get something figured out. You cannot let them leave without a deal. And maybe it's already too late for that. So
that would be a crime, though.
There's no way.
You get my sense.
What you're describing is a felony.
You get my sentiment,
yes,
though.
yes. No, you're right.
They either have to give up something in order to just get the deal done, or one of the sides has to fork over.
Or in terms of not letting them leave, like trade T, so you know what you're working with for free agency. Like there is a much darker, sadder edge of this, sword too, where if you realize that all this stuff that's happened, DK as extension, all this stuff, you're in the same boat with T as you are with Trey, it would suck, and I would lose every bit of faith I've ever had with the Bengals front office, as little as that is remaining. But again, you have to know what you're working with going into free agency. We've talked about it a lot. If Tee Higgins leaves, where does wide receiver fall on your list of needs? Very high. Very high. So how do you go into free agency not knowing whether you have him or not? And I see some people in the chat saying, well, Trey and T are under contract for this year. It's not that big of a deal. They're not free agents. Why weren't we in the playoffs last year? Because we let this stuff linger into camp. Could
you imagine if we had 2 players holding out?
3. Why would Jamar be done by then?
Well,
3.
Well, also, who the hell does this 1 year at a time?
Yeah.
Nobody sits in for good franchises. Don't think 1 year at a time. They think long term. They think, what is this window? I promise you, they don't think it's just every year we're just going to reset and see what we got after everything happens. No, you make multi-year deals. You're trying to build something here. You missed the playoffs back-to-back seasons, and I don't know how the Bengals are still directionless. There's only one direction you can go, and they're not going that direction. I think it's a disgrace. I think it's a disgrace with what's gone on here. And Casey's right. This offseason is a complete and utter failure. And it doesn't matter what deal they get done now because they've lost. Cincinnati Bengals have lost the offseason. I don't know how you possibly go into a draft without any idea of what you're doing either. I know the draft is still a month away, but are you going to tell me that the Bengals are going to get a deal done in a month? I'm not going to bet on it. You're not going to see me betting on that. Like you asked, what's the first domino? I don't. Honest to God, I don't know if there is. Maybe they're waiting for somebody else to be the highest paid non-quarterback. Maybe they want to see that number get to actually quarterback number. We want to pay Jamar $55 million. Maybe that's what they're waiting for. I don't know. Maybe they're waiting for another wide receiver that's Tee Higgins caliber to see if they can get $36 million, and then we have to pay T $40 million. I don't know what the Bengals are waiting for. Clearly, it looks like they're waiting for that. They're just trying to break all the records. They're going to try to have the 3 highest non-quarterbacks in the history of the sport on the same roster. Good for you. Let's see if it pays out. Let's see if it works.
Joe Burrow had a lot to say after the season. He's been obviously very, very quiet since. Look, people like putting out cryptic messages on social media in the middle of the Myles Garret announcement yesterday of the extension in Cleveland. And it wasn't just about Myles Garret. I think it's what it means for Cincinnati because obviously, there's just a lot of question marks there. This was on the for our viewers on YouTube. This was the Instagram story yesterday that Joe Burrow posted, and it's a box with a bunch of white Legos on it. And
I don't know that Lego in the back looks an awful lot like a capital T. I think the deal might be done.
Signed, sealed, delivered.
It looks like a T to me. I don't know. You guys find your answers, but I think a deal might be done. We got news by noon?
Yeah. What could that cryptic message be? Why? What is Joe Burrow? So why just post a picture? He's a millionaire. All right. He lives a very fun and cool life, a life we will never even know what it's even close to being like to live. And in the middle of the day on a Sunday, a grown man just posted a picture of Legos on his Instagram story. I have no clue what it means. What could it mean? Anything? Any guesses? You
He
said
probably
it's a
had some kind of contractual obligation to have one Instagram post yesterday, and he was like, "Oh, I'll put up Tee Higgins' extension because surely they'll get it done." And then obviously when that didn't happen, he was like, "Well, shoot, I gotta take a picture of my Legos."
Yeah, maybe he's like, I'm gonna get the most garbage Legos I can find, and because the Bengals are garbage. Maybe that's what he meant.
I tell you who has always had, who's ever, like, this guy's never been at a loss for words. He always has something to say. Jamar, have you guys noticed? He says nothing. The guy says literally nothing. I applaud his strategy.
He has had a few Instagram stories. He has.
Has he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's had a couple. I think he had like the
picture of Joe like looking over his shoulder.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant like as far as like interviews go, like nothing.
No,
yeah. No.
But yeah, the cryptic social media stuff, no doubt. Yes, my bad. But yeah, I just meant like he's always a soundbite. There's always something that's leaked out there that he's been airtight. He hasn't said a word because he just knows. Hey, I'm going to get mine eventually. I'm going to get mine somewhere. It's up to you to make sure it's here. So.
Yeah, I did see some people yesterday after Josh Allen's contract rolled around. It was, holy cow, Joe Burrow's guarantees that his next team are going to be nuts. And it was like, yeah, you're probably right.
All right, well, we'll continue to keep an eye on the rest of this.
Or we won't, because Twitter's down again.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
so I'm trying to keep an eye on it, but I don't know where else you get news.
The Bengals are probably doing a live thing right now that we're just not privy to because Twitter's down. They've extended T. Jamar is done. Trey Hendrickson is done. And we're just sitting here doom and gloom because X is down.
This is going to be a rough week with the re-airs because the next 3 days obviously we're live from 10 to 12, and then there's a whole hour of time in between, and then the whole time we're live on radio where stuff could happen. So maybe if we get to Wednesday and there's still no positive Bengals news, we break it at the end of the show.
Okay, I like that.
And we hope they get it done before free agency.
Oh, this is a good one. Here's a funny one. Everybody, if you're watching right now, let's get this show to 50 likes. Let's get the show to 50 likes. Our guy Trace has come in here and said, if this chat can't get 50 likes, the show is canceled. So let's get 50 likes for the show. 50 likes. If you're watching right now, give the show a like, because if the Bengals can't do anything good, at least like the fact that we're all here and we're mourning together. We're one collective group, and that's really, isn't that what it's all about? It's about the friends along the way that we've all made, and that's at least how I take it.
We already got to 50.
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thanks, chat.
Good job. Show continues in the next segment.
It's a next segment. We'll be right back. More off the bench when we come back. All right, we welcome you back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. So, look, I hope that we're going to get to Reds coming up in a bit. I hope that they don't bring us this down the way the Bengals did. There was a lot of optimism and excitement about the Bengals, and they have you here. Like there's a lot of optimism about the Reds last year, and they had us here. Like there's only like I really hope the Reds don't break our heart again.
Oh, they're going to break. They're going to break your heart. I mean, what are we talking about? They made the playoffs. They made the playoffs. What was it? 4 times in 100 years? Yeah, I don't care. The Reds. I'm happy for the Reds. I'm going to cheer for the Reds. I'm going to watch the Reds. Good for the Reds. But man, if you think the Reds are, if you're banking on the Cincinnati Reds to save you out of your sports sadness, man, you gotta go find something else to do with your time. Go play pickleball. But yeah,
look at that energy. Where's that energy been
well,
all day?
It's legitimately laughable to put all like, oh, the Reds are good this year. Yeah, okay. But yeah, no. Going back to it real quick, the Cincinnati Bengals. I've heard literally. I mean, I'm not the world's biggest Bengals fan. Everybody knows that. I still follow the Bengals. I still keep attention to everything that's going on. I mind myself to whatever's happening out in the Bengals ether. And I saw guys like Rapine and Morrison. You have the room, right? The Bengals have the ability to get all these deals done. They have the cap space. They have everything that you need. They can get it done. And then we talk about it in here, and it's like, well, they don't have the cash. And I think, I don't know if it was Reed or somebody was in here saying, the Eagles guy, the Eagles owner, sold a portion of their team. He gets more billions of dollars to use on their roster. Bengals don't have that, family-owned business. And I started to be like, okay, maybe they don't have all the cash that they need, right? Maybe that is a fair excuse. They can't give somebody $50 million in just cash. There you go, have it. Maybe we are like that. But it's only because the only reason we're talking about it is because you don't get the deals done early. That's the only reason we sit here and complain about money, is because none of these deals are done within the time that every other franchise gets them done. That's the crux of this issue. And until it happens, the Bengals are going to sit here on their hands and just watch the world burn. Because that's what's essentially happening here. I hope the Cincinnati Bengals sign these guys. I hope they do. I hope they go back on the Trey Hendrickson thing and say, look, we messed this up. Let's just pay him. Let's just do it. Because we're clearly in hot water right now. But then it goes back to what Justin said, right? Mike Brown doesn't change his ways, and he hasn't. He has never changed his ways. I don't give a damn about selling the stadium name. Don't care. He hasn't changed his ways when it comes to running his organization, trying to win football games. It's been the same thing. The Bengals lucked into having a generational quarterback. Yeah. They lucked into that. Lucked into it. They didn't draft well. Yeah, you have to pick him, I guess. But he was there. You had the first overall pick. You take the best available. That's what the Bengals did. And now this isn't like the Andy Dalton thing. This isn't Andy Dalton where it's like, okay, I don't want to pay anybody. Let's reset. You don't get to reset. There's no reset button anymore when you have Joe Burrow. The only time you get a reset button is when everything falls apart and Burrow requests a trade. Because I hate to say that, but that is like, if you don't get deals done, that's going to happen. That's not a if, it's going to be a when. If they don't get the Jamar deal done, if they don't get the T deal done, and the organization openly doesn't listen to their star quarterback, he will request a trade. Now again, are we overreacting? Is this a little bit of an overreaction? 100% it is. Because I do think the Bengals will get the deal done. With Jamar. Maybe not with T or Trey, which would be a disgrace. But with Jamar, I think they get the deal done. And they'll have a chance next year. But this is something that can be prevented. And that's why everybody's pissed off right now.
So let me ask you. Oh,
no, go ahead.
Sorry, Jake. The question I have too is like, so we talk about how poorly run the Cincinnati Bengals can be or are. But like at the same time, we talk about the way that the Bengals do business. We can't say that the way they do business hasn't worked. We can't. You just can't. And that's coming from me, who I'm not a Bengals fan. I'm a fan of a team that's a rival in the division. I'm not looking for feel-good stories about the Cincinnati Bengals, but I will say the way that they've run that organization for decades, it obviously doesn't have a Super Bowl to show for it. They have been to Super Bowls, but they've won many, many division titles. They are no stranger to the playoffs. They have underachieved the last 2 years. There's no doubt about it. I do believe there's a way more efficient way to run an organization, but we also act like money fixes all problems. I'm a fan of a team that has an owner that is significantly richer than your owner. I'm a fan of a team that, as an organization, has significantly more money than your organization. And the Browns get a deal done with Myles Garret over the weekend, and people say, well, the Browns are just slapping money on their problems, this, that, and the other. I like having an owner that is cash rich because I feel like you could buy yourself out of problems from time to time, but also it's the Browns. They've had a ton of money. They've had a ton of money since the Haslams have taken over, and the only thing that more money has brought is more problems when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. I do have to give a little credit to the Bengals front office from the standpoint of they've created a lot of their own roadblocks, but we can't sit there and act like the way that they do business doesn't work. They are consistently in the playoff hunt. They are consistently in the division hunt. They are consistently winning football games. It's not like this is a horrible franchise. Cleveland has been a horrible franchise. Cleveland struggles to win football games. They don't make the playoffs. They don't get to Super Bowls. They don't do any of those things. Your team does. As much as we bury the Brown family, they have mishandled this 100%. So when we ask if people are overreacting, kind of. I think there's panic setting in because you don't want to see Trey go. You don't want to see Tee Higgins go. You don't want to see Jamar Chase get angry and just say, forget this, I'm out. You don't want your quarterback, Joe Burrow, to demand a trade. Those things happen. New conversation. But to say up until this point in 2025, I don't think they're even close to being the poorest run organization in football. We can't say their way doesn't work, but their way seems to be outdated and away from the times. I think that they have to turn it around quickly, but I don't think they're the worst run franchise in football, and I don't think they're a poorly run franchise at all when you look at the success that they've had decade by decade by decade.
Yeah, Kenner, let me kind of back up some of your points here on it being an overreaction, because it is somewhat of an overreaction for the sake of, like, what are they going to do this free agency? Because they have these guys on a tag, and Jamar is making like $21 million on the 5th-year option, whatever that number is. Those numbers are going to go down inevitably with extensions, more than likely. So they're going to just get that money, like more money, when those deals get done for this free agency. But the issue is, like, the Bengals, even if they don't get those deals done going into like July or like whatever, like in the middle of the training camp, they won't spend up to the cap. Then that inevitably, like when they get those deals done, then they'll be $20 million under the cap. So it's just like, what's the point, right? Like, maybe if they were to get out of their way a little bit and actually spend to the cap, I could understand not getting these deals done, and it would be a bit of an overreaction. But as it stands right now, what have we seen that makes us believe that they've changed at all, really, and how their philosophy is in paying guys? And so in that sense, like, they could figure it out, but I don't expect it. Don't expect it one bit.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Jacob, you don't think this is an overreaction, though, correct? This is a huge problem, correct?
Yeah. I think it is a huge problem. I think we grossly underreacted on this show to the Joe Burrow media tour.
Yeah,
I think that's what we figured out at this point. We thought that was all positive, and at least the two of us, I think, I don't want to speak for Elliot, but I think we talked about it enough on here that we took that as generally a positive. And Joe's pushing the guys in the right direction. This public outrage would be the only thing that gets them to change their tune. I now think he knew this was how this was going to go at that time when he was sitting at those desks selling his point. He knew this is how it was going to go, and he was giving his last ditch effort to get him to change, and it wasn't enough. And I think that was the first Joe Burrow media tour of probably many in his time in Cincinnati, and they're going to get less and less enjoyable. So buckle up. If the next few months don't get very fun and we are very wrong, the next few years are going to be the most unenjoyable years of Bengals football of all time.
All right, moving over. Anything else on the Bengals before we go to Casey? Were you jumping in there?
No, just.
Am I wrong?
No.
If the next 2
right.
months don't become the most fun thing ever, the next 2 years are going to be hell.
Yeah, I mean, he's right.
And then it's just, again, all the pressure comes down to the draft. You said it earlier.
And you hope you go 1-16 in a year there's another Joe Burrow. Because you're not going to go sign a big-name quarterback.
No.
So you got to hope you luck into being terrible in a year there's another legend. Got lucky once. Screwed it up.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Obviously, more Bengals talk throughout the week. We'll transition over to the Cincinnati Reds real quick. An update on they have reassigned a couple players throughout camp to minor league camp. And one of the key names on that list a name that should not be of any surprise, Noelvi Marte on that list right there. I know that's a name we've been keeping an eye on as far as a guy that has high expectations, or that we at one point had high expectations for. A very interesting 2024 run, a lot of distractions, a lot of not living up to expectations, this, that, and the other. Had a chance to redeem himself in camp. I don't think that he's failed. I think the Reds just have a lot of depth in the middle infield right now, and we wanted to see if he can make things interesting. Are you surprised that his name pops up on the list of guys that were cut and reassigned to minor league camp as we sit here in mid-March?
If you want me to be a sports talk guy, I would say sure. I'm a little surprised because at one point he was a touted prospect. Once I think we traded him or traded Luis Castillo for him and Edwin Arroyo and Levi Stout and Andrew Moore, I think Noelvi was going to be our number one prospect at the time, and it was going to be exciting. So, yeah, I'm a little surprised. But if I'm going to be honest, of course I'm not surprised. He's been terrible. He's been objectively terrible since the whole steroid situation played out. He's been one of the worst players in baseball. So, no, I'm not shocked by this. He should be starting in AAA. It's an unserious organization if they let that guy get major league at-bats. And obviously there's a couple more names on this list we'll touch on here in a second that the Reds have reassigned to minor league camp and or option to AAA. But as for Noelvi Marte, no. I mean, that's what happens when you're bad at baseball. You don't play in Major League Baseball. Now, I will say, Casey, we can throw the whole graphic up there because there are some other names on there that I thought Rhys Hines could have been a guy that was competing for an outfield spot. Obviously, it's a crowded outfield at this very second with who's going to get there. But I would have liked to see Rhys Hines have a chance, and maybe he will come up at some point this season. I like Rhys Hines a lot, and then hopefully he's able to make his way. Connor Phillips has been, I would say, a disappointment the past 2 years or so, or at least a year and a half. He's been a disappointment. That's pretty disappointing. Again, Sal Stewart is another name, obviously being reassigned to minor league camp. He's had a good spring, so that's a bummer to see. But yeah, these are all moves that I expected, I would say, to happen, So
yeah,
no major shocks. It goes back to this Mariners deal, though. I keep looking at it. Mariners get Luis Castillo. The Reds get Noelvi Marte, Edwin Arroyo, Levi Stout, Andrew Moore. How close are we? I know Edwin and Noelvi are young. How close are we to that trade not working out at all?
If Edwin and Noelvi do anything, I think it's a decent deal.
Because I think
Castillo was never going to re-sign here. That's the biggest thing everyone always misses because he's still producing in Seattle. He signed an extension almost right away after that. I forget what the number was, but he was never going to re-sign in Cincinnati. So, I mean, obviously, we could have never guessed Noelvi was going to take burger steroids and be out for a year and come back and stink. So that definitely throws a wrench in the plans. But, yeah, I think with what Edwin Arroyo is as a prospect and what we thought Noelvi could be, if he can get back to any kind of version of that, I don't think that'll be the worst thing in the world. Obviously, I think if you just change the pitcher names and send Tyler Mahle in theory for that return and send Castillo for the Twins return, you got two pretty good trades. So I think it did all work out for the Reds. Obviously, we're in a situation now where we're talking about potentially being a playoff team, so I think it's a good place to be. It's a tough pill to swallow if Marte never works out. I do feel vindicated, though, with him getting sent down for buying his stock, because if he would have been in the MLB, that would have not been good for the prices. The whole premise around buying his stock is it's as low as humanly possible right now, and this proves that is true.
People didn't understand that segment.
No, not at all.
People didn't understand.
Not at all. They thought we were just buying and selling the players.
Correct. They didn't understand.
Obviously,
that
I think Matt McClain's a better player than Noelvi Marte. I did see a rankings yesterday that had him MLB Network as the number 6 second baseman in baseball.
Really?
He's played 90 games.
How about that?
90 games.
Number 6.
Number
baby.
6. Ellie was number 2 shortstop.
Behind who? Gunnar?
I think it was Gunnar. Or no, it was
Yeah.
Bobby Witt, and Gunnar was 3.
National media has jumped. They jumped on the McClain bandwagon right away. Like
Big time.
right
Big
away.
time.
There's a lot of guys that they'll see years of very good baseball from that they don't jump on. They saw 90 games. And I mean, a lot of times when people talk about how the Reds are going to be so much better this year, it's because Matt McClain's coming back. And it's like, although that definitely is going to be a reason that they are going to be better, there's still part of me that's like, well, man, like this is going to be technically his year 2. And we saw what year 2 meant for a lot of rookies who had great years their initial, good, first season. So we'll see. I don't want anything bad out of Matt McClain. I'm hoping that they're right at the end of the day. But yeah, they've been very high on Matt McClain. Also, I know you guys, I think you reacted to this on Friday. I'm not sure what was covered, what wasn't, but Hunter Green, the opening day starter, that's an easy one. I don't think that was at any point was ever going to be up for debate. I do know when they released their rotation, though, obviously we figured 1 and 2 was going to be Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, but Nick Martinez coming in at number 3 in the rotation with Brady Singer as they're pitching in the 4th spot. And then they don't have a 5th pitcher listed, which I think, we've kind of been debating who that 5th pitcher is going to be in that rotation. When you look at that rotation order, anything stand out to you? Nick Martinez, the number 3 pitcher in this rotation.
No, I think that's about what I expected. Maybe you could have said Brady Singer, and I think as the season goes on, that whole starting rotation is going to change outside of Hunter Green. I do believe that. So you're going to see a lot of different starting rotations throughout a course of a 6-month season. And not having a 5th starter right now is frustrating. Andrew Abbott's still dealing with an injury. I don't know who's going to take that spot. If I were a betting man, I'd bet on Graham Ashcraft. Carson Spires was an innings eater last year. You could see Carson Spires. So it's probably a 50-50 shot between him and Ashcraft who takes that 5th starting job. And then, of course, you have the conversation, what happens when Abbott comes back and – and you don't need Graham Ashcraft to start, or you don't need Carson Spires to start. What's the bullpen going to look like then? So there are some interesting pieces still to be determined, and we still have a lot of spring left. So I'm not going to make too many drastic calls now, but I would bet a lot of money the 5th starter is Graham Ashcraft.
I would expect we see Graham Ashcraft a lot in this rotation this year. I think obviously with what we saw last year, I think we're pretty scarred in Cincinnati with how many pitchers we can expect to see in a given season. But if any injury happens, I would assume that's the easy pick, and you throw him in the rotation for as long as you need him there, and then you go back whenever anyone gets healthy. And hopefully he's a serviceable enough bullpen arm that he just stays in the majors and stays with the Reds, and we don't have to worry about any kind of back and forth or anything like that. But if he's just going to be a starter, I would assume he's the next man up in every single situation. We do have to remember, I know we say it as a joke a lot, but what was it, 2 years ago? He was part of the Big Three. So it's not a terrible situation to have if he's your first one up when an injury rolls around.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me back in July or August that he'd be part of the rotation in 25, I would have been like, that's not a good thing. I don't think it's a terrible thing as long as he could bounce back a bit. Confidence obviously going to be crucial in that. But do want Andrew Abbott back. I think the Reds need Andrew Abbott back very soon. Rhett Lauder obviously being restricted with his throwing program from the beginning of spring. What's the outlook for his season going to be as well? I know he's throwing, so that's fine. But they have some options. They have some options. But I don't know if Graham Ashcraft being in the 5th spot is a good or bad thing. I don't know if it's great. I don't know if it's bad. It's just going to kind of be a wait and see thing. I do know it doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside that Graham Ashcraft is your 5th pitcher. I will be honest.
Better than 3rd.
Yeah, to be fair.
There's no doubt I'd rather have Andrew Abbott at this very second. But Graham Ashcraft I think has shown that he can pitch at a major league level. It's just, can he go that 3rd rotation or 3rd time around the lineup? Are you going to be able to do that? And I don't know if he's going to be able to, but if he can give me 5 innings of solid work, I'll count it.
Him at 5 works out perfect if Nick Lodolo doesn't regress. I know that sounds weird.
Nick Lodolo is the big thing this year. If Nick Lodolo can be healthy and if he's able to compete at a major league level throughout the entire season, I'm going to be very, very happy. If he's unable to do that this year, we're going to have some hard conversations.
Yep, no doubt. All right. Well, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us today. Hit the like button if you haven't already on the way out. We'd appreciate that. And we'll do this again tomorrow. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
You got it off.
I did. I learned today.
I didn't get it off in time.
I learned today.
I didn't get it off in time.
We're just going to cry again for another 15 minutes?
Well, yeah. Let me ask you guys this.
Okay.
Joe Burrow requesting a trade would rank where in your Cincinnati fandom?
It would be
in terms of worst moments.
It would be the worst thing to ever happen to me in my life. Not just sports.
It would be the worst. It would be worse than Joe Burrow getting his ACL torn.
That's your number one? Wrist is so much worse for me than ACL.
Well, ACL was so
yeah.
ACL.
We were going to win that Super Bowl.
Well, and ACL was like that team was bad.
Yeah,
So,
but it
like,
was. I finally, for the first time in so many years, had enjoyment watching the Bengals again.
You believed?
I got to watch Joe Burrow play for my team, and then he tore his ACL, and that stunk.
Interesting.
But the wrist, I'm still not over the wrist.
Still
my
not over the
apartment in
wrist.
Tuscaloosa's walls still aren't over the wrist.
You're punching walls.
Oh yeah, there were holes from the wrist.
Oh boy.
Not good.
I think it would certainly rank as far down as it could possibly be on my list. I mean,
It'd be the number one. Yeah.
Mr. Mo says, "How can you say we were going to win the Super Bowl last year? I mean, we had just steamrolled the Niners. They were playing the best ball in the entire league, and then we were on the doorstep and playing really well, moving the ball against a Ravens team that no one had been able to move the ball against yet. Can't say we were going to win that game, but we're certainly competitive. Definitely would have made the playoffs without an injury there. So, yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. And spoiler alert, Mr. Mo, if you have an injury to a star player, you can just say you were going to win that Super Bowl.
We get that.
Forever.
We get that.
Forever. You can.
We
say
get that benefit.
So.
That's the best benefit of sports.
Yeah. No, you can just say that.
Yeah. So we own that. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to get better in Cincinnati. I mean, even if they get these deals done, like we've said, they won't get all 3 done. They'll get 2 done, maybe.
Yeah.
And if they get those 2 done, it still feels like a massive miss this year.
This is the least confident I've been about 2 out of 3. That's been like my floor basically all off season. It's like even if they overpay, they're going to end up getting 2 of these guys done. I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, Tee's better than DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
So what is he getting? 34?
There's no way. I mean, there's just no way. There's no
Right.
way of. I have to believe that. But then again, I can't believe that. I was going to say I have to believe that T is trying to make a deal that's for everybody and for him and Jamar to stay and for Joe and then I think about it. It's like no, because the deal would have been done by now. So
Right.
It's just crazy that the Bengals, before this all broke down, like 3 major contracts have screwed them: Crosby, Garrett, and DK. All for different players too. All for different players.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy that we're at this point now where we don't even know. Like, I'm not confident in Jamar. Like, if you said like you're not. This is the lowest you've been for 2 out of 3. This is the lowest I've ever been for getting Jamar done this year.
I'm with you there, but I'm still like, I'm bottoming out on a Jamar extension at like 80% yet. Not this year, I mean, but like at some point. I'm bottoming out at like 79% yes.
I'm at 80% week 1.
Okay, yeah. Then we're in the same boat. My thing with Jamar, it's like, that's the exact conversation we have. Jamar's in a different boat. Like, if the Bengals just do Bengals things, they still extend Jamar.
yeah,
Like, the organizational practices would still have them extending Jamar. Like, that's the only reason why I'm not. And the Gesicki contract, which I feel like, at least at the time when it happened live, and we thought maybe this was what's going to get the ball rolling for the rest of the weekend, the rest of the day, have, a phenomenal weekend, get everyone done. He just signed a Bengals contract.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the issue. Or I guess not issue. I guess it's a good thing because we got him to stay. But, like, he didn't want anything new. He didn't want to break the structure. He took a Bengals contract at exactly what projected market value was going to be. So I have seen nothing this offseason that leads me to believe they'll break their form. Nothing.
No. And what I said on the show, I still believe that this is going to bleed into the season.
Yeah.
And it's going to be another lost year because if they're not willing to pay, and this is where I have an issue with all of it. If you're not willing to pay T and Trey and Jamar, you're certainly not willing to pay free agents.
Right.
Because why would you?
Well,
at that
to be
point?
fair, they let DJ Reader go and they gave Sheldon Rankins the exact same deal. So it turns out they are
That's true.
willing to give money to lesser free agents.
I guess
Guy's not on the franchise.
I guess that's true, but it's pretty brutal, I would say. It's a pretty brutal place to be if you're a Bengals fan, and all that stuff that they said. And Bengals fans, I will say, are a little bit overreactionary at times, as most franchises, fan bases are. But this is where you get worried. I mean, this is everything that they're saying in the national media is true. They were right. Shout out to them, because they were right all along.
Do you think they listen or hear any of it? I guess not listen. Listen's a dumb question.
You talking
obviously
about
they don't listen, but do you think they hear any of it?
You think Bengals fans don't hear any of
The
it?
Bengals front office hears the
fans.
I'm starting to think they don't even hear it.
No, I don't think they hear it at all.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't think it's
Just
like
complete nothingness.
I don't think it's like the Reds. The Reds
I think they might. They don't care.
The Reds fans attacking Reds ownership feels personal.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, it feels like it's a personal fight.
Yeah.
Bengals fans in the Bengals front office seem like that's one. It seems like it's one side fighting the other, and the other's just there with their backs turned, and they don't feel anything.
Yeah.
That's at least what I gather.
I think you're right.
Because it's if they haven't listened now, this offseason, to get these three guys here, they're never going to listen. And that's the issue, and I imagine that's why Joe Burrow is probably thinking to himself, why did I sign here? Why did he sign here? I imagine they told him we're going to have a plan. I imagine they said we're going to bring your guys back. I imagine these have been conversations that they've had. They're not just not talking to Joe Burrow. And then we're sitting here today, and it's like, this is crazy. I mean, it's crazy to not have anything done. Just not proactive. It's killed them. So going forward, we'll see. And I'm hoping Jacob's right. I'm hoping it's an exciting couple of months.
That'd be fun. That'd be really fun.
Because if it's not, and if it's a disaster, like I kind of think it will be, the future of the Bengals is pretty bleak.
If they line up week 1 with franchise tagged T, last year of the deal Trey, and I don't care what Jamar's on at that point. If they line up with T on a franchise tag on the field and Trey last year of his deal on the field, start the clock, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Start the clock. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but I think it's about a year.
You ready for my bit? My Cincinnati.
I like Casey bits.
There is a team in Cincinnati that will figure
here
out
we
guys and
go.
Get players at just top of the free agency market.
Didn't they also just trade their local MVP candidate?
Yeah, but they went and got another MVP candidate.
Okay.
FC, man, they won.
Did they?
You watched, Elliot. You watched.
Yeah, I did. It was. I think it's the Reed bit where if I'm at a bar and the FC game's on, I do.
Watch every game.
My eyes are kind of there. They're kind of watching a little bit. It looks like they dominated, right?
They should have crushed them. The final score was 2-0. Kubo and Baird had 6 opportunities that they just missed on. So offensively, they're really good. I think they still need to figure out defense, but Miazga hasn't been in the lineup yet, so we'll wait and see where that looks in a couple months from now, because I think he's a month left until he's fully recovered from the surgery, so we'll see. But, yeah, there's a team here in Cincy if you really want to root for a team that will, put the team first and winning first, and that's FC.
There you go. There you go.
A lot of championships in their storied history.
Well, lots of competing for championships. They just can't get over the hump.
Rats. They fit in.
They fit in.
They fit in with the rest of the crowd.
What did we give? What did our players give ownership? Not to segue off that topic.
Oh, the PA card?
Do you remember?
No.
C. We gave the Bengals ranked.
There we go.
They gave Mike Brown and the Blackburns a C, which ranks 25th out of 32. So do you think that would?
Too bad.
Do you think it could get lower?
Yeah. Certainly could get lower.
Yeah.
Would you rather have Mike Brown, who's obviously inept, running the team, or would you rather have Mike Brown's hypothetical 13-year-old son running the team? Because that's what got the Jets an F-.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. I think I'd take the 13-year-old. I think we could build a Madden roster. If we build Madden rosters, we're in great shape.
What we already do.
If we bring back the Dublin whatever we made on our members only stream, I think we could actually win a championship.
Do you think so?
Wow.
Yeah, that roster consisted of Baker Mayfield and Matthew Stafford at one point in the same year.
Yeah, you had to get rid of Baker.
Yeah, we did. And we did.
Some problems.
What can we? Who's the name we can get if we don't get T? What, can we get Cooper Kupp? A little cup.
No, if we don't get T, I just want to enjoy life a little bit. Out. So I want a Mika.
Okay, all right, I like that.
Who cares about anything anymore? If they don't want to win, why do I want to win? So why would I draft defense? If they let Tia go, let me have fun watching the team 17 times before they miss the playoffs. Let me draft Mika.
Yeah, to be fair, like maybe if you have to trade T and Trey, and I brought this up, maybe you can convince the Commanders their first and their second for T and Trey.
Oh, I wouldn't do that. I think that's low. I think that's light. I think we can get 29 for Trey.
Well, yeah, first and so you mean we could get more than
a T and Trey trade package
first,
would
second,
have multiple
third?
first.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my mind.
So this year's first and next year's
and their second.
Okay. Think big.
I think there's a world. My only two hopes at a first round pick for Trey Hendrickson are 28 and 29.
Yeah.
Lions and Commanders.
Yeah.
That's the only two chances, I think. Only two chances.
Rule out the Eagles because they always manage to find a way to pay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And they did. They were. It was the Browns at like minus 850 or whatever it was, and then they were next at like 220. And then they dropped off to third was I forget who, but a pretty significant drop off. They were the only team that ever had a better chance to get Myles Garret. So I don't know if they would be in the mix for Trey, but certainly seems like it.
Alex is asking you guys, would you take a second and a third for Trey?
Yes.
I don't even think it's a question.
Yes.
It depends on how high of a third it is, but
I would assume that a team trading for Trey would be
it'd be
outside the top 15.
That third round pick is like a 90.
Right.
The 90th. So
yeah, but as long as the second one's top 50, I'm in.
Okay.
I'm not paying him 30. I'm just not.
Yeah. It's done. This is all done. Waited too long, and now you're screwing yourself.
Yeah.
So good for the Bengals. But that's it. Everybody, thank you for tuning in today. We will have more Bengals talk, I'm sure, tomorrow. Hopefully Elon fixes his stupid website so we can all find out what happens in the world.
That'd be nice because we're 60 seconds into the legal tampering period.
There we go. 60 seconds in. Make sure to use Starlink whenever you can, too. Everybody have a very pleasant Monday afternoon.
Box lunch.
On top of that, we'll be giving updates on Chatterbox's networks, whether that's YouTube or Instagram or wherever, whenever something breaks for the Bengals. So make sure to follow us everywhere. And might as well follow us whenever Twitter comes back because I'm sure we'll be giving our reactions there, too. So
See you guys.
We'll see you guys. Box lunch coming up.
Love you all.